สวัสดีครับทุกคนผมชื่อควินตันผมมาจากอเมริกาขอโทษผมจะพูดภาษาอังกฤษ So I'm just going to give a really quick summary of wastewater pathogen surveillance and how I've been helping out this year as a part of my one-year fellowship with Dr. Supaporn and Dr. Opas in the TRC EID CC. And as well, I've been partnering with Dr. Rome and Dr. Leilani. So to begin wastewater surveillance, it started in the mid-1900s with polio. And since then, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic, it has received a lot of investment from foreign and private entities as well as governments in order to make it more adaptable and effective moving forward. So just briefly, I will be giving my argument of why I think that wastewater surveillance is useful. I will be also giving some of the trade-offs and considerations that need to be made. I'll be talking about some of the completed studies that I've been helping with, and as well as some current studies that we are working on and future plans that we have. So to begin, wastewater surveillance is non-invasive. So with clinical or individual samples, it requires active participation from the patient, whereas with wastewater surveillance, that is not the case. So some of the enrollment strategies and biases that might come with that actually are not taken into account with wastewater surveillance, which is great. As well, it is cost-effective and fast, so a single sample, depending on what scale that sample is taken at, might be able to represent an entire population at a given point in time. So that reduces the resources that are needed for the amount of people needed to collect samples, the amount of time needed, enrolling patients, and processing and transporting the samples. So, as well, population-level insights. There have been a number of studies, specifically with SARS-CoV-2, that have shown that wastewater surveillance has been able to predict increases in spikes in SARS-CoV-2 numbers in the population few days or even a few weeks before. And as well, you can detect new or emerging viruses before they are clinically shown in that region. And so in that sense, it has also been really useful. And the reason for this is because wastewater surveillance for some pathogens is able to detect in asymptomatic or pre-symptomatic patients, which are often missed in traditional surveillance. Some considerations that need to be made are population participation rate. And since most of the contributions of pathogens are through the fecal or the urine route, this is especially important. For example, when you're sampling from a hospital building, an inpatient building, you're going to expect that the patients in that building are going to have a higher participation rate to the samples that you are sampling from, whereas from an outpatient building, they might only be there for about an hour. So all the people entering that building might not be represented in your sample. As well, there's sample complexity. When there's pooled samples, there's always going to be issues in isolating and distinguishing between genomic material, especially when there's multiple people contributing. As well, especially in hospitals or in municipal wastewater, there's going to be a lot of contamination. And so different pathogens are going to react differently to that, and especially dependent on the type of contamination that is available. As well, there's going to be dilution factor. So given on the certain day or what type of wastewater you were sampling from, it's going to be different in terms of your quantification based on the dilution. So for example, in an airplane, most of the water gets expelled to save weight during the flight. So those samples are highly concentrated. Whereas at a municipal wastewater treatment facility, it's going to be highly diluted. And so being able to compare day by day at the same sample site or between sample sites. There needs to be a way to standardize for that. As well, pathogen shedding dynamics. This is probably what is least understood in terms of being able to do this type of surveillance. So in terms of viral shedding dynamics, from just the human perspective, those need to be looked further into in terms of the different factors that can influence that, and so we can model this stuff better. As well, within the water, we want to know how long each pathogen can survive and how long it can remain viable and detectable, and so that we can use our data and use it to predict emerging cases in the future better. So two studies that I've been working on. One with Dr. Leilani has been the hospital buildings. And so we've collected 392 samples from 10 different collection sites. This building is one of them, from July 2022 to May 2023. And we wanted to establish which hospital buildings are best suited for future surveillance. And so we had a couple criteria that we were looking at. One being able to detect emerging or novel variants of COVID, and as well being able to translate and correlate with trends that we were seeing throughout the hospital and in the greater Bangkok and Thailand communities. Some of the findings that we have found is that the on-site treatment center in the hospital had 100% SARS-CoV-2 detection. As well, we found that the pediatric building, its viral concentrations correlated really well with what we were finding in the community. Finally, we found high concentrations of SARS-CoV-2 in buildings where there are not patients, indicating that there might be some staph SARS-CoV-2 viral shedding. As well, in international aircraft, as Dr. Rome had discussed, we took 146 samples from January 2023 to April 2023. And the goal was to assess from 22 different countries coming into Thailand how the reopening of tourism was affecting the cases that we were seeing here. What we were finding was we found a consistent sample detection rate over time, despite the decline in cases globally during our study period. As well, we found that the viral concentration varied across flights. So earlier I talked about participation rate with our samples. It seems here that there are factors beyond just time that are influencing the participation rate in the samples taken from these flights. As well, we detected mutation sites which characterize a suspected lineage, which has never been reported to Thailand in 7 different samples, which again shows the use of this type of surveillance as a complement to clinical surveillance. As Dr. Rome had discussed, we are continuing to do long-haul international aircraft surveillance. We have expanded it past SARS-CoV-2 to several other viruses, including enteroviruses, flavoviruses, and other types of coronaviruses. And in the future, we want to take a more one health approach when we're doing this. So we are going to be looking at AMR. We plan on doing this at like the municipal, the hospital, and the livestock levels to better understand how all of these are correlated with each other and influencing each other within the Bangkok metropolitan area. So, ขอบคุณครับ